Hey everyone, welcome to the 2018 Leadership Summit. My name is Christina Canino and I am the current chapter president at Colorado State University, and today I'm going to be talking with you all about your new member induction ceremony. To start off, I just want to emphasize the importance of your new member induction ceremony. You all do a lot of really great things throughout the year as a chapter, but your new member induction ceremony really is at the top of that list. So your new member induction ceremony is an opportunity for new members to celebrate their acceptance into NSCS and share it with their friends and family. So I remember when I was first inducted, my parents drove up and we kind of just made a whole day out of it. After the ceremony, we went and celebrated with lunch. So just keep in mind that it really is a special event for a lot of your new members. Additionally, the induction is commonly the first time that a new member will be meeting other NSCS members, chapter officers, the advisor, and any other members of the NSCS community. So it's really the first time that they will be understanding what it means to be a part of the NSCS community, and you want to leave a good impression on that. Additionally, your new member induction ceremony gives both officers and members a chance to experience leadership, delegation, networking, event planning, and even crisis management. So in the end, your induction ceremony is much more than just bringing in new members. It provides different opportunities for both your members and your officers, and even your advisors and DHMs. As far as the key components go, we're going to go into each of these with a little bit more detail, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what we'll be talking about. So we'll be talking about the general planning timeline and what to look for as far as what you want to have done and when you want to have it done. We'll also go over the best forms of communication and how you want to be getting out your information about your new member induction ceremony to your new members. We'll talk about the logistics, the when and where of your ceremony, as well as the role that your keynote speaker will play and the importance of really getting a hold on that early. We'll talk about different types of ceremony additions, and then we'll go into more of the details of the script that you'll use for your ceremony as well as the day of execution, and then we'll end by talking about the types of volunteers that you want to have at your ceremony. As far as the general planning timeline goes, this is a great go-to for if you're feeling overwhelmed at all about planning and executing your new member induction ceremony. However, I will say that it doesn't hurt to do anything earlier than this plan suggests, especially because if you do a little bit here and a little bit there, it takes the load off of your planning and just makes it a lot easier. So this is a great way to break it down. So 12 plus weeks out, you want to begin that initial planning of your ceremony, thinking about where you want to have the event, start brainstorming who you want to have as your keynote speaker, and really just get the ball rolling on the initial stages of planning. 8 weeks out, you want to make sure that you're confirming your logistics. Additionally, you want to start coordinating all of those volunteers that we'll get to talking about in a few minutes. And at that point, you want to send invitations to your keynote speaker and DHM. With that being said, you need to have your keynote speaker and DHMs established before that 8-week mark so that you can formally invite them to the ceremony. Then 2 weeks ahead of time is when you're really just making sure that you're communicating to everyone that will be there that the event is coming up and including any details that they need to know about the event. So it's just sending out that reminder so that they can keep in the back of their head that the ceremony is coming up in just a few weeks. Also at the 2-week mark, you'll want to be finalizing any of your day of materials. So that's going to be things like your PowerPoint presentation, any programs that you might be giving out, things like that. And the most important thing that you're going to want to do is host a full rehearsal with your officer panel and advisors. I think this is something that is really easy to overlook because you think it's simple enough that you can wing it the day of, but it is crucial to host that full rehearsal with your officer panel prior to the day of your event, and I promise you it will make your ceremony go so much smoother and just reduce so much stress for everyone involved on the day of. 2 weeks out, you really don't want to be doing anything major. It'll just be ironing out any remaining details or tying up any loose ends that maybe didn't get caught the first time around. For communication, you're going to have two main outlets that you'll use to get out all of your information about your induction ceremony to your members. One of them will be Facebook and other social media, and the other will be email. Now, I know at CSU we've gotten a lot of feedback from our members that they don't necessarily check their email very often, so they rely a lot on getting their information through Facebook. On the other hand, there are some members that don't even have a Facebook, aren't into social media, and rely a lot on their email. So I would say to be careful that you're making sure that all information that you're sending out is consistent. So the posts that you put on Facebook and the email that you send out, make sure that it has consistent information. For your Facebook and social media, you want to be sending out updates on your Facebook page starting 8 weeks prior to the event. And then at the very bare minimum, you want to post that reminder again at the 2-week mark and at the 2-day mark leading up to your ceremony. However, it doesn't hurt to add a couple more just small reminders in between that 8-week mark and the day of your event. Just because you might have some people that don't check Facebook very often, or they miss one of your posts for any reason. So it doesn't hurt to just add a couple more small reminders in there other than the 8-week reminder, the 2-week reminder, and the 2-day reminder. When it comes to email, as far as the timeline goes, you're going to kind of have that same breakdown of 8 weeks, 2 weeks, and 2 days. However, the difference with email is that official invitations are going to be sent out by the national office. Following that send out of the formal invitations, you want to be sure to personally contact your new members of your chapter, outlining the details of your induction. It can get confusing for members to receive an email from nationals and then not hear anything from your specific chapter. So be sure that once those formal invitations are sent out, that you follow up with a personal email from your chapter that outlines the details of your ceremony. As I mentioned before, the logistics of your ceremony are really just the when and where, and this is something that you want to get established as soon as you possibly can, just because a lot of the good locations on campus tend to book up a decent ways in advance just because of the different things going on around campus. So the earlier that you can get a hold of where you'll be having your ceremony, the better. With that being said, there are certain things that you want to keep an eye out for to make sure that the location that you have in mind does in fact work for your ceremony. So you need to ask things like, does this have the capacity to hold the amount of members and their family that we are anticipating having there? You also want to know if it's available for the exact date and time that's needed. You'll want to make sure that you have audio and visual capability because you'll be having a PowerPoint and you'll need to show videos. You'll also want to make sure that there's good parking options available. This is something that is so often overlooked, but you want to make sure that you don't have new members showing up who are spending 20 minutes looking for parking, or they have to park really far away, anything like that. So make sure that you are aware of the parking options and that you communicate that to your members. And with choosing a location, you want to become aware of the rules and regulations of where you'll be. I say this one because we had an incident where we were hosting our new member induction ceremony at a new location because we had enough members to be able to have it in a bigger auditorium on campus. And the ceremony went great. The location was perfect as far as the ceremony goes. It had great capacity, great audio and visual system, everything like that. And following the ceremony, we started to serve cake and water, and we were told at that moment we weren't allowed to serve food that wasn't purchased from that facility. And so we kind of had to last minute scramble and throw everybody outside. So that would have been something that we definitely should have checked on ahead of time. So that's why I put this here, just so that you guys can also be aware that there might be some odd rules and regulations that you may not have thought of. So just ask about them and make sure that you are aware of them so that you're not having to scramble on the day of your event. Your keynote speaker is such an integral part of your induction ceremony. They only speak for 10 to 15 minutes, but they will set the tone for your ceremony. And with that being said, you want to be sure to choose someone who's a leader or a role model on your campus, and preferably someone who is used to giving speeches to students and who has a good motivational message that they can give to your new members. At CSU, we've had professors who do a lot of different outreach events with students. We've also had one of our DHMs give a speech, and this past year we were able to get our VP of Student Affairs to give a truly tremendous speech. We've had members come up to us in meetings later in the semester and ask, when the next time they would get to see Dr. Hughes, who gave that speech. So if you are diligent about reaching out to your keynote speaker as early as possible, you can get a really stellar keynote speaker like we did with our VP of Student Affairs. But again, the key to that is reaching out as early as you possibly can. Another tip for keeping your keynote speaker in the loop and making sure that no communication gets mixed up is to assign one officer to oversee communication with the keynote speaker. This just streamlines all the information that's going back and forth and makes it a lot easier to coordinate everything with your keynote speaker. So your ceremony additions are going to be things like decorations, food, and preliminary visuals and audio. With all of these things, the key is simplicity. You don't want to go overboard on any of this, but adding a little bit here and there can make a pretty big difference in your ceremony. So for decorations, this is really just how you're going to represent NSCS at your ceremony. We just use a couple balloons and do some streamers around the railings, and then we throw all of our NSCS swag on our check-in table so that new members can grab them as they check in. But again, you don't want to go overboard on this, just a little bit of flair. As far as food goes, including just a super small treat and a simple beverage is a great opportunity to network with new members and their families following the event. What we like to do is have cupcakes and either water and or lemonade. Following the ceremony, we head outside and we're able to enjoy those treats with our new members and use that as time to really build a relationship with them, get to know them a little bit more before they really get involved in the other chapter events. I would recommend, again, something easy. We have done cake before and it gets messy because you have to cut it and serve it. So just really think through any type of snack that you're going to do. But again, I do think that if you can incorporate some type of small treat, it's a great networking opportunity. For preliminary visuals and audio, leading up to your ceremony, you're going to have new members filing in with their families and sitting down, and you don't want to have them sitting in an empty, silent auditorium. So it's great to throw on a little bit of music in the background, something simple. Jazz is great. Avoiding lyrics is always, I think, the safe way to go. And then if you want to put together just a short slideshow with pictures of different things that your chapter does, that can just be playing on loop. That can be a great visual aid. Again, you don't want to go overboard with anything, but it is good to ensure that as you have people arriving, they're not sitting in an awkward silence. For your ceremony, you'll be provided a general script outline and PowerPoint outline, and these two go together really well in order to help organize your ceremony and just keep it moving along in a nice fashion. What you'll be able to do is take this script and presentation and you customize it based on the specifics of your chapter. So talk about when you have your meetings, mention your officers, and put in all of the specific things about your chapter that your new members will want to know about. With both the script and the presentation, it's really important that you don't wait until the last minute to start them. So start them early and also review them thoroughly. And anytime you make a change, again, just go back and review them, because you have to remember that a lot of people are going to be seeing the presentation and listening to your script. So you want to be sure that it really is thought out. Additionally, you'll want to make sure that everyone of your officers knows who will be speaking at each part of the ceremony. And equally as important, you want the officers who aren't speaking to know what to do, when to do it, and it'll make more sense as you're reading through the script. There's certain parts where, when they're getting their pins, you want to have certain officers in one location and certain officers handing out pins, certain officers saying the names. And so these are things that you need to talk about beforehand. And I don't mean the hour beforehand, I mean well before. And that's kind of going back to what I was saying earlier. That's why it's so important to do a full rehearsal with your officer panel at least once, at least a week in advance, so that everyone's on the same page and that you're utilizing your script and your PowerPoint well. Just as another kind of just small tip, it's a great idea to print multiple copies for your ceremony of the script, so that in case one gets spilled on, or if you have multiple officers speaking, they can have a copy of their own and highlight the parts that they'll be saying. So just make sure that you print multiple copies and come prepared. As far as your day of execution, these are kind of the 5 main things that you're going to want to be looking for. The first is to have someone monitoring your Facebook page and other social media for inquiries. I can almost guarantee that you're going to be having new members reaching out through Facebook or other social media asking questions about your ceremony. And even though the answer to their question might be contained in an email that you've already sent them, it is imperative that you're getting back to them as soon as possible so that they don't feel flustered on the day of the ceremony. You, as well as the rest of your officer panel, will need to arrive at least 1 hour before the start of the ceremony. And at this point is when you'll, really just be ironing out any loose ends, getting everything ready. And like I said, you'll have new members who will be showing up well before your ceremony starts. So you do want to have a presence of officers there to greet them as they arrive. It's also good to designate reserved seating sections for your inductees, your DHMs, your keynote speaker, and any other special guests that you might have. You really just want to be sure that anyone crucial to the ceremony has a place to sit and that they know where that place to sit is. In the time that you get there, you'll also want to be setting up and decorating the check-in and ceremony areas. So again, like I mentioned before, your decorations should be very, very simple. So it shouldn't take too long to set up, but this will be something that you'll most likely do the day of your event. In the event that you have a location that maybe will let you set up some things the night before and you'd like to do that, that's a great option as well. And as far as what you want to bring, aside from whatever decorations you might need, is energy. And I know it sounds super cheesy to bring the energy, but you definitely need to do this. So grab a cup of coffee, do whatever you need to do to show up with a smiling face and bring that energy. Because your new members, everyone that I've seen come in as a new member comes in so shy and timid, and they're not really sure what to expect. And if you show up with a smiling face and you bring that energy, that will transfer to them, and it will make your ceremony so much more enjoyable, and just really, again, emphasize that NSCS community and make your new members feel a lot more comfortable. It is way easier to just sit and mingle with your officer panel, stick with who you know, but it's important to get out of that little rut that you might be in and go out and mingle with the new members, and again, just really be energetic so that that eases their nerves and that they're excited about the induction. Coordinating different groups of volunteers to help out on the day of your induction ceremony can really help take the load off of you and your officer panel. Using groups of volunteers is something that we started doing as a chapter the last 2 inductions that we've hosted, and it has made a world of a difference. So, what we like to do is just offer different volunteering positions to our current members who have already been inducted. And that way, it gives them an opportunity to become more involved in our chapter, especially for those who are looking to potentially run for officer positions. This is just another way for them to get involved in a way that also helps alleviate a lot of the stress that can be associated with the day of your ceremony. One volunteer that you will absolutely need to make sure that you have at your ceremony is a photographer. We typically just use our VP of social media, and they have the sole purpose of going around and taking pictures before, during, and after the ceremony. So that's one thing that you definitely need to make sure is covered, and it's a lot easier to just make that one person's sole focus for the day to make sure that you do get good photos from the event. It's also really beneficial to have a group of volunteers to serve as your check-in and registration team. You can definitely have officers do this, but what I find with this is that it takes away from the officers' abilities to really establish an initial connection with the members, because you are typically trying to rush through registration and go quickly. You don't really get to make a firm connection with those new members. So when you have a team of potentially current members that have already been inducted that are focusing on check-in and registration, that opens up the officer panel to be able to mingle and help out with other things in preparation for the ceremony. A perfect example of something that the officers can be doing during check-in time is ushering any of the new members and their families to where they will be seated. This is especially important if you end up having your check-in table in a different location from where your ceremony is. So what we do is we have our check-in table just outside of the auditorium that we have our ceremony in. So it's really beneficial to have officers just kind of rotating, grabbing people from the check-in table and just walking them into the auditorium. And that short distance from the check-in table to the auditorium is a great time to, again, just establish that initial relationship with those new members and kind of warm them up and really make them feel welcome. Another great team of volunteers is the setup and teardown team. We typically have two separate groups for this, but we've also had in the past where people want to volunteer for multiple things, so they will do the setup and then they will come back for the teardown as well. But point being, it's really nice to not have to worry as an officer team about doing the setup and teardown so that you can focus again on the more important things during those times. So we just have a very small group. You really don't need very many people. I think we typically have 2 to 3 current members that come an hour before the ceremony, just like we do, and we just instruct them on setting up decorations, setting up the check-in table, and then similarly following the ceremony, because we all go outside for refreshments, we have a team that is inside taking down the decorations and making sure that everything looks just as it did when we arrived earlier that day. And that's something that is just great because it happens behind the scenes and it's just kind of an out of sight, out of mind type of thing. You don't have to worry about it. And again, it allows your current members to become more involved. And if you do choose to serve food, you can also give the option to have a volunteer who just is solely in charge of setting up or serving food. I would, again, lean more away from doing any type of food that needs any major serving, but even if you do cupcakes, it can be nice to have someone just there opening the cupcake cases, making sure everything is stocked up and things like that. But I definitely do encourage all of you to incorporate volunteers because it can make a really big difference. So these are just a few tips, tricks, and resources that I received from officers who were primarily in charge of planning our inductions in the past. So these are the 3 things that they said to look out for. One of them that I have said is just to get started as early as possible for getting your venue and your guest speaker. The second thing is to really make sure that you're delegating a lot of the duties that come with planning the ceremony onto other members of your officer team. So you can have your social media officer completely in charge of all the Facebook updates. Have your community service VP be in charge of recruiting all of your volunteers. Have your star status coordinator, maybe be in charge of contacting someone that they know who can be a photographer, things like that. Just delegate it so that way all the officers are involved in the planning process. And third, you just want to always expect for there to be more people than you think. The last thing you want is for people to show up and you don't have enough food for them, or there's not enough seats or anything like that. So you want to account for there to be more people than you would anticipate, and then you can go from there. So that's all I have for you guys. I just want to wish you the best of luck in planning your new induction ceremony, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.